Are you a noob? A filmmaking noob? By the end of this video, you'll know. I'm going to cover 3 beginner filmmaking mistakes that you need to fix to be able to take your filmmaking career to the next level up here. Let's see if you are. Let's get into it. So the first filmmaking mistake that I see all the time from new beginners is when they're working on a piece of commercial work or an interview or whatever it may be, they're not motivating their lighting correctly. Now, what does this mean? Let's just take an interview for an example. It's a standard thing that every single filmmaker needs to do at some point in their career. When the subject is sat down and you're going to light them, everybody knows, you put your light fixture on the side angle of an individual, you beam the light down onto their face, and then you get a nice bit of roll off on their face where you have shadows on one side, light on the other, and it creates depth. That's standard lighting. But the really important thing to understand is when you're going to put that light in a position, have you got something that motivates that light? Now, what do I mean by this? When a viewer is watching the video and they see a subject, the individual that's been interviewed, being lit, can they tell, is there some reference in the frame of where the light is coming from? Now, that could be something like a practical, where you have a lamp in the background that's on the same side of the light, or a perfect example is a window. And I'll put a couple of examples here where you can see a light has been used to motivate where the light is coming from, or a window has been used to motivate where the light is coming from. Often what I see new filmmakers doing is just slapping a light up, sometimes on the opposite side of where the light is actually coming from in their frame. This can look really unnatural and really jarring for a viewer that's watching it. So make sure whenever you're lighting a subject or you're lighting a frame that the lighting is coming from a source and direction that makes sense for the person that's watching it. Okay, so the second thing that I see, which is a dead giveaway of a rookie filmmaker and a mistake that if you're doing it, you need to fix this, is when you get to the editing suite or even when you're filming on set, you're thinking way too much about flexing and your transitions opposed to the composition and the aesthetic of what you're shooting. Now, let me explain. When you first start out in filmmaking, you see transitions, whip pans, crazy movements, and things that look like a flex that filmmakers do. As a newbie, you can think, that looks really cool. I want to learn how to do that cool thing. And you can start introducing these whip pan transitions or crazy transitions when you hit your editor. It really is taking away from the message of what you're trying to deliver in your video. When filming or editing a piece of work, the most important thing that you need to think about, what is the message? What is the story? Will this shot help carry that story? And will a transition at any point help tell that message or story? If you're sat in your editor or you're out on set and you're doing crazy transitions and you're adding a transition between every single shot, it's going to be taking away from the message that you're trying to convey in your video. One of the earliest bits of advice that I got when I was in my filmmaking career, which has stuck to me to this day, is an edit should never take you out of the flow of what's happening. The most important thing is to carry the message, carry the story, and if you're using crazy transitions for the sake of it, you're going to be damaging your engagement from your viewer. It's a much bigger flex as a filmmaker to have a scene which is really well lit, has really nice composition and some really nice movement, have a hard cut and move to another shot which is also very well composed, very well lit, and helps carry the story. That is going to make you a much better filmmaker focusing on those things than focusing on how to do a crazy transition. Okay, so the final thing, rookie filmmaker thing that I see all the time is people overusing high frame rates. People are so keen on looking at camera specs and going, has it got 60 frames? Has it got 120? Has it got 240? How many frames? How slow can I make this image look? The truth is, really good filmmaking and most filmmaking only uses slow motion very sparingly to emphasize something. If you're putting slow motion on every single shot, it doesn't have the same impact as if you used it sparingly. A slow motion of 50 frames or 120 frames is like going out for a nice meal. If you went out for a really nice meal every single night of the week, it would just get boring and it wouldn't have the same impact. But if you go out for a nice meal every so often, you really enjoy that much more and it adds more emphasis and more purpose. And the same is true for using slow motion. You shouldn't use it for every single shot. What you should use it for is purposefully to draw attention to a particular moment in your film, not use it all the time for the sake of it because it looks cool. And just another quick one on the note of frame rates, that is another rookie thing that I see, and that is people cranking the shutter. So instead of getting a neutral density filter, an ND filter, they'll crank that shutter really high to, they'll have 25 frames a second, and then they'll put their shutter up to like 200 frames because they'll be trying to compensate for the exposure, get their image to the right exposure. But what you end up with is an image which has got unnatural motion blur, it looks really strange, and it's an absolute obvious sign of beginner filmmaker work. What you should always do is pick an appropriate frame rate, pick an appropriate shutter speed for that frame rate, whether that's double or whether you need it slightly more than double if you're shooting something like sport, and then expose correctly using a neutral density filter, an ND filter, whether you've got one in your camera and using a cinema camera, or you've got one that you stick on the end of your lens. Make sure you do that. Don't crank your shutter and make your videos look unnatural because they have no motion blur. So that's the end of this one. Are you a noob? Are you not a noob? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, do me a sweet one. It'll help the algorithm if you just drop a little headbutt on the like button, punch a little comment in the comment section. And if you want to see more of what I'm up to on a day-to-day, I'm shooting commercial shoots on a daily basis, a weekly basis. Check me out on Instagram. My handle is @Joseph_Housley. That'd be much appreciated. But that's it for this one. It's been emotional. Until next time, ciao.